Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea is fighting a second wave of the coronavirus as daily cases top 200. The government's taking emergency measures to stop it, and it could lead to stricter social distancing. President Moon Jae-in says the government's going to invest more than $15 billion into so-called smart schools to not only improve education, but make it more equitable. Because of the pandemic, though, in-person classes are on hold. And South Korea and the United States begin their annual military drills, scaled down and with extra precautions because of South Korea's second wave. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea is seeing a second wave of COVID-19 infections in Seoul and the surrounding area. Measures to contain the spread have been stepped up in recent days and most likely will continue to be. Many of the cases are linked to churches that the authorities say have not been following the rules on quarantine. Kim Do-yeon reports.
South Korea reported 246 new cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday, with 235 of them being local transmissions. It marks the fifth straight day for new daily cases to be in the triple digits, totaling nearly 1,005 days alone. The majority of them have been popping up in Seoul and the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province. As a result, the government has formed an emergency response unit for the capital area. The unit will work to contain secondary spread throughout the area. They have divided the region into 13 sectors, and 45 teams with 190 members in total have been assigned to various roles. In addition, health authorities will bring more hospital beds into the area in case beds start running low due to the rising number of cases.
This week will be a critical period to stop the spread becoming a big wave. From our experience, our response via our quarantine and medical systems has improved, but we can't guarantee a quick end to the rapid growth in cluster infections.
The new cases are mostly linked with clusters from churches. Infections linked to the Sarangjeil Church in northern Seoul are nearly 400, with 15% positive rate from the tested. And those linked to the Urijeil Church in Yongin have surpassed 120. The authorities say churches that do not abide by quarantine rules and refuse to cooperate with tracing efforts will be dealt with aggressively. In addition, clusters at a police station and a coffee shop are under close scrutiny as they have experienced cases and have the potential to become cluster zones. So far, South Korea has reported 15,761 cases with 306 deaths. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And the total number of COVID-19 cases worldwide is now topped 22 million, according to the official numbers, with 2 million more cases just in the past week. Our Hong Yoo reports.
A second wave of infections looks likely as countries such as South Korea and New Zealand, which had initially been successful at containing the virus, are seeing a resurgence of COVID-19 infections. Data aggregation website Worldometer said that as of 11 p.m. Monday, Greenwich Mean Time, the global total confirmed cases had topped 22 million. This comes just 8 days after the total hit 20 million and 230 days since the first case of COVID-19 was reported to the World Health Organization. The number of deaths has surpassed 776,000 worldwide. The U.S. has the greatest number of COVID-19 cases and fatalities, with more than 5.6 million cases and 173,000 deaths. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says COVID-19 is now the third most common cause of death in the U.S., following heart problems and cancer. Brazil has the second most COVID-19 cases worldwide, followed by India, Russia, and South Africa. New Zealand, which had gone more than 100 days without any cases, saw an outbreak in Auckland last Tuesday and since then has seen a resurgence of community transmissions. In response, the country's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced the general election would be pushed back 1 month to October 17. The World Health Organization said on Tuesday that it was concerned COVID-19 is being spread mainly by people in their 20s and 40s, as many of them are unaware they are infected, putting at risk the elderly and those with other health problems. Hong Yoo, Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. have started their annual joint military drills, though they're scaled down because of the recent uptick in COVID-19 cases in South Korea. This year's exercises are scheduled to run through August 28th, involving computer-simulated war scenarios. U.S. Forces Korea heightened the health protection level for its service members in all areas of South Korea early Monday. Under the revised rules, the number of personnel working on bases will be reduced. The USFK will also check the temperatures of all people entering its bases. North Korea's ruling Workers' Party will hold a meeting tomorrow that could result in a shakeup of the party's leadership. According to the North's state-run Korean Central News Agency, officials on the Central Committee will decide on an issue of, quote, crucial significance. It didn't say what that issue is, but it mentioned improving the fighting efficiency of the party. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un decided early this month to launch a new department in the party, so it could mean restructuring. The meeting could also deal with measures to overcome the recent flooding and the economic hardship caused by the pandemic. South Korean President Moon Jae-in has vowed to turn some 2,800 old school buildings into so-called smart schools by 2025 as part of the government's New Deal initiative. He was speaking Tuesday during a visit to Changdeok Girls Middle School in Seoul, a school that's been taking a lead in the transition by teaching some classes using smart technology.
정부는 1월 1일 2025년까지 총 18조 5천억 원의 과감한 투자를 하겠습니다. 그린 스마트 스쿨을 우리 교육의 방식과 사회적 역할을 근본적으로 변화시키고 지역과 국가의 대전환을 이끄는 토대로 만들겠습니다.
The plan calls for the adoption of digital and green features into the education system. These include the use of eco-friendly energy sources and construction materials, while making sure there's no digital divide in terms of education across the different regions. President Moon also expressed concerns over the spike in new COVID-19 cases in the Seoul metropolitan area, saying that the full-fledged reopening of schools will be put on hold for the time being. He called for thorough efforts at schools to prepare for the next semester, saying the country is at a critical juncture that'll decide the success or failure of quarantine efforts. Currently, schools in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province are required to operate at under one-third capacity in terms of students. And some of South Korea's biggest companies are now going back to work from home. IT giant Kakao started last Friday, saying it'll do so indefinitely. SK Telecom and KT Corporation are doing work from home for the rest of this week. Other companies are also allowing remote work for pregnant women or those with pre-existing health conditions. IBM has unveiled a new processor chip for enterprise hybrid cloud computing, which will be manufactured by South Korea's Samsung Electronics. The U.S. tech giant says the Power 10 chip was designed by IBM and will be produced using Samsung's 7-nanometer manufacturing technology. This chip will be IBM's first commercialized processor built on that scale. IBM says it has partnered with Samsung on research and development for more than a decade. The chip is expected to help Samsung achieve its target of challenging rivals like Taiwan's TSMC and the U.S. firm Qualcomm in the global non-memory chip market. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you as always for coming on. Hope you had a good holiday.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, on Wall Street, the S&P 500 is inching closer to an all-time high, but not quite there yet. The Nasdaq, however, has logged a new high, boosted, of course, by tech shares. What was the story Monday in New York?
Yes, as you said, the overall market seems to be showing some mixed signals. But in any case, the Nasdaq has continued to show strong trend and breaking the record high numbers. The Dow Jones lost about 0.3%, whereas the S&P 500 gained slightly by 9 points, by about 0.3%, and Nasdaq climbed by 110 points, about 1% rise. Clearly, the mixed signal is coming from the continued discussion between the Democrats and Republicans regarding the boosting measures. And they're saying that they're a stalemate over a new stimulus package after Democrats proposed to send more than $900 billion to states and municipalities in one bill, and the GOP's counteroffer did not include any additional aid for the state and local governments. So continuously, there's a dispute happening between two parties. However, though, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said on Sunday that she would call the House back into session to address the funding for the U.S. Postal Service. All in all, we need some kind of decision-making happening quickly. Without that, there will be continuation of some mixed signals coming from the over U.S. However, though, because of continued COVID-19 incident, we think that the untaxed businesses will continue to flourish, and that is resulting into quite significant rise of the share price for the major tech sector and the major growth sector. And we think that that trend should continue for the future. That would have similar impact to other countries as well. If you look at the China, a lot of the stocks that seems to show strong movement, particularly relates to the IT sector. The Shenzhen index seems to be doing quite well relative to any other indices that we see in Asia. So overall, we think that the focus on the IT sector and the untaxed businesses and the growth sector should be the major focus till the end of this year at least.
Well, it was a three-day weekend in Korea, and we continue to see a large rise in the number of new coronavirus cases. And as we started the new week, the Kospi and especially the Kosdaq have plunged. What happened in the Korean markets?
Right. As I said, the doubts over the stimulus package of the U.S. seems to putting some concern for the Korean market. We need to see the global economy pick up. And if we don't have that, highly dependent, export-dependent Korea will suffer. Also, if you look at the COVID-19 incident, this is quite significant because Korea's GDP sustainability came from strong retail sales and domestic consumption numbers. But even though the Green Book reports that the Minister of Economics and Finance noted that the South Korea's domestic demand continues to take turn for the better, despite the uncertainty related to COVID-19 so far. If the continuous impact of the high new patient, it can be quite negative in the future. If that's the case, then the consumption pickup that we see might not last for long. So that is the major concern. And because of this, we saw a significant drop of Kospi by 2.5% today. Kosdaq is down by 4.2%. Of course, because of since the beginning of this year, Korea did well relative to other countries in terms of the equity market. Particularly the Kosdaq was up 99% from its bottom, and also YTD, excluding today, it was up almost 24%. So a correction was probably needed with this kind of negative news coming from the economic front. However, though, we need to see how strong these new pickup of the new patient for the COVID-19 will happen, and the implication of that related to the retail consumption.
Indeed. Well, this week we'll have new data on Korea's household debt in the second quarter. Other data coming out too, including coronavirus data. What will you be watching in the days ahead?
Right. The household debt number is very important for Korea. As I said, Korea's domestic numbers were strong because of the continued boosting by the local government, as well as the continued spending by consumers. But if you look at the consumer debt as percentage of GDP for Korea, the last quarter, the number was 95.5%, which is one of the highest number relative to any other countries in OECD countries. Of course, the other countries that showed higher number than Korea might be maybe UK and Australia, and Canada, but still Korea being close to 100%, that is very high number. So what that means is that the domestic consumption being strong cannot be lasting for a long period of time without government support. And we think that the government's continued fiscal support is a necessity. And if you look at the overall government debt to GDP ratios, it's only 36.6% of the GDP. So what we will be watching carefully is that how much consumer can spend relative to the household debt, and also how much government will spend in order to boost the economy using a very low debt ratios. So these are two major numbers that we need to watch carefully to see how we can sustain the economic growth of Korea relative to any other countries in the future.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thanks so much for sharing your insights today. Always appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
In other news, the K-pop girl group Blackpink has become the fourth biggest artist in the world in terms of YouTube subscribers. Their record label YG Entertainment said Monday that Blackpink surpassed 44 million subscribers on their official YouTube channel. Since the group released their latest hit, How You Like That, on June 24th, their channel has been growing by 100,000 subscribers a day, surpassing Eminem and Ariana Grande. Blackpink still trails Ed Sheeran, DJ Marshmello, and Justin Bieber, who continues to be the pop star with the most subscribers in the world. Toronto Blue Jays pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin has earned his second win of the MLB season. The left-hander gave up 1 run in 6 innings on the mound, helping the Blue Jays beat the Baltimore Orioles 7-2 at Oriole Park. Ryu's ERA now stands at 3.46. Meanwhile, fellow lefty and longtime rival Kim Kwang-hyun of the St. Louis Cardinals had his first big league start. He threw 57 pitches, which wasn't enough to decide the game, but it was a win for his Cardinals 3-1 over the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.